Alrighty, well, it was good to get back on the field today. I thought the bye week was good for us on a couple fronts. Um, we got a chance to get a couple guys, a little bit more healthy. We when you go 7 straight weeks, naturally you have your bumps and bruises and things that kind of take their toll. So I thought that was good for us last week. I thought to work on some schemes and develop some players that we're going to need here in the second half of the season was good for us, and then working on us from a psyche standpoint. We had talked about it's not about our capability to perform. We've proven that. We've shown that in the first half of games, even for 3 quarters. But that ability to finish was obviously a big point of emphasis for us last week. And so did as much psychological work on that as we did from a physical standpoint. And then I think got a chance for everybody, for the guys, to kind of take a deep breath this weekend, step back and step away from the game for a minute, and come back today re-energized, ready to go. And I love what I saw. I thought the energy was really good at practice. The intent was there. And this is going to take a really good week of preparation. This is a good football team we're playing. I think Dave has done a fantastic job from year 1 to year 2 of implementing his culture and his style of play. It's a sound football team. They play tough. They play hard. They run the ball well. They work together in unison on defense. They're a veteran group. So with all that being said, we got to prepare really well and play really well Saturday at 11 a.m. So with that, we'll open it up.
Steve, I guess if you could just talk about the details of what you did to try to get the guys, mentally prepared to finish games, and any changes on the depth chart after the off week.
Yeah. The one thing I should note, we have DeMarvion's back practicing, which is good, obviously coming off the concussion from a couple weeks ago. The rest of it is pretty status quo. Keaton is still day-to-day with the hamstring. The rest of the guys are in a good place. I think what we tried to do was get them to understand when you're capable of doing something and you do the necessary repetition of it, the circumstances shouldn't determine your ability to do something or not. And, we went through a couple different exercises that kind of pertain to that. Watched a video that pertained to that, had a lot of dialogue about that, if you're capable to do something in the first or second quarter, and the looks remain the same in the third and the fourth quarter, clearly if we don't execute it, that's not really the opponent at that point. That's us being distracted by some outside influence, whether that's the score, sometimes it's fatigue, whatever that is. And then the key for us is can we keep doing the next right thing, whatever's asked of us, for an extended period of time? And we wouldn't ask them to do something that we don't think they're capable of doing, and they've shown that they were capable of doing it. And so now it's our job to get them to sustain that and continue to do it regardless of the moment, regardless of how big we think that play is. And that comes with trust. That comes with trust in their own preparation. That comes in trusting the guy next to you that he's going to do his job. And that comes in trust from the coaches that we're going to put them in the best position to have success. And so I think they really understood it. I think they bought into it and have really grasped a hold of it. And we saw it today. But the key to the drill for this week is the preparation piece and that repetition of it, so that we do something to a point where not just can we do it right, but to where we can't do it wrong. And that's the mentality. And I think the guys have really bought into it and feel great about their approach heading into the ball game.
Continuing on that psyche standpoint, did you see a frustration level last week coming out of the Oklahoma and Oklahoma State finishes? And is really the only way to see if what you're doing works is to see it in the fourth quarter of a game?
I would agree. I think there was a real level of frustration. I would have been more concerned if there wasn't. I think that the frustration comes in from, I think they know they're capable of doing it, whether it's position-specific, player-specific, or scheme-specific. And then when it doesn't happen later in the game, there is a level of frustration because I think they know they're capable of getting it done. At the end of the day, we want to put ourselves in position to where we do it well, so well that, you want to perform in the moment when that time comes, and that comes from our preparation and our repetition. but we shouldn't worry about the moment. We should always fall back into this is what we do and this is how we do it on a consistent basis. So yes, ultimately, it's going to come down to doing it in game, but we shouldn't put that is the test, when in reality, we should be testing ourselves every day to see how far we can take this thing, this idea of doing right and doing the next right thing for the next play, and one play at a time mentality, which I know some of that is coach speak. I understand that, and we hear that a lot, one play at a time and all that kind of stuff. But for us, that it's really true, that when we focus on that next play and we give that play the credit it deserves and the life of its own that it possesses, generally we're better. And so if we can really get to that point and understand it, regardless if it's the first play of the game or the 70th play of the game, it takes that same focus, it takes that same energy, it takes that same detail of doing your job and trusting the guys around you that they're going to do theirs.
Hey, Steve, you guys get to play two teams coming up that are ahead of you in the standings, and you win those two games, you're right where you need to be with games remaining. How much has that been a part of your locker room? And how aware are they that the goals are still there for them?
I think our team's really aware. I mean, we don't, like I said, I'm not one to not point out the obvious. They read, they see, they know what's happening. But the point of it is, bigger than that, is us playing really well Saturday. And, our idea is if we trust our process and go through our process, we'll get the results we want. And whether it's this week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever that is, end of the season. So it's one thing to recognize what may be ahead, but if you look too far ahead, you miss what's right in front of you. And we've got a really good opponent in Baylor Saturday that we've got to make sure we play to our standard. And that we've set a standard and a bar of what we're capable of playing at. Now we need to do that for 60 minutes. And if we do that, we'll be in a position to win the ball game. Whether we'll see how it goes, but we need to be careful looking too far down the road and not miss what's right in front of us. But to think that our guys don't understand that probably wouldn't be fair to them. It'd probably be a little insulting to them. So they understand it, but our focus now has got to refocus in on what we need to do this week against a really good team.
Coach, this isn't your first program that you're trying to teach how to win, how to finish, and all the mental that comes with it. With that said, how slow of a burn is it? I know it can't happen over a bye week. From your experience, how long does it take a team to figure it out, and then also to have the strength and conditioning and those kind of components to truly finish?
Yeah, I think it's like anything, right? Finishing games and winning those tight games like that, I think is somewhat contagious because when you can do it once, when you can do it twice, you start to build that confidence and belief in doing it. But you have to do it the first time to do it the second time, then the third, then the fourth, and then it starts to become just really who you are. But ultimately, when we don't do it, and some could say, well, it's year one, it's going to take time. I'm about how quickly can we get there, right? It's a race, and how quickly can we get it all right? And clearly, when our guys operate and perform, it's a beautiful thing. We play really good on offense, defense, special teams, and it flows really well. But now there's that last component where just to finish the game. And how do you finish the game? You play the next play, and you focus on the next play, and you don't worry about what the result could be. You focus in on what that process is to ultimately get that result. So how long that takes, I don't know. I'm sure it's different for every team, for every coaching staff that's new. And quite frankly, every year, regardless if you're a new staff or not. So that happens to be our hurdle, I guess, at this point of the season. And so that's where our focus is. But not losing sight of, we still have to develop our players and work on the other aspects of our program that we continue to need to raise the bar on. So it's a great challenge. Like I said to you guys last Monday, we really embrace it. I love this aspect of it, that, man, there's more work for us to do that we can dial into. I think our team has embraced it. And like I said today, I saw it with the approach and the intent that we came to practice with, I think is real positive.
Coach, another week, another fine quarterback, Jerry Bohannon for Baylor. Talk about Bohannon and what he'll bring to the game on Saturday morning.
Yeah, Bohannon's a really efficient player. I think he's got 12 or 13 touchdowns and only one interception, so clearly takes care of the ball. I think they do a nice job with him moving the pocket, getting him outside the pocket. Obviously, they're a run-first offense, and the run game sets up a lot of what they do in the passing game, and then he's efficient with it, whether it's taking the shots or hitting the over routes or the sliders and different things. But the biggest thing he probably does is taking care of the football. They don't give you a lot of short fields. They try to possess the ball and shorten your snaps on offense, and he does a nice job managing all of that. But in the end, when the opportunities present themselves, he takes advantage of it, and whether that's through the air or using his legs. So he's a fine player, really good running back, and a really good scheme.
Coach, the old saying is, players win games, coaches lose them. So I'm just curious, what do you feel like you guys as a staff maybe could be doing better after 2 straight losses, whether it's in-game, practice, whatever?
I'd never heard that adage before, but I'll take it. Okay. I think we win as a team and we lose as a team. That's the way we look at it. But the point of it is, it's like anything. We want to make sure everything that we're doing is putting our players in the best position to be successful, whether that's through our game plan approach, whether that's through our depth chart, whether that's through putting players in certain positions in game that give us the best chance as a team and as from an individual standpoint to make plays. So ultimately, when you get to a bye, you get a chance to kind of look at your first 7 games and say, okay, what are the things that we do really well? What are the things that our individual players do really well? And let's make sure we're doing enough of that so that our players are still playing with the confidence needed. Now, on the next side of it, the coin is, okay, what are the things we're not doing so well or individuals are not doing so well? And do we want to continue down that road of trying to get it right and keep working on that? Or is it say, hey, you know what? We're going to table this scheme or we're not going to put him in that position until we get more time in spring practice. And so that was kind of our approach. So that, like I said, ultimately our job is to put our players in position to have success. So that ultimately as a team we can have success. And so we try to evaluate all of that so that in the next 5 ball games throughout the second half of the season, guys are very confident in what they're doing and feel good about it so that we're in position in the fourth quarter to go win a ball game.
Now that you have the Oklahoma State film to look over in a week to kind of mull everything over, how would you assess the state of your receiver room and the depth in that room for guys who aren't named Joshua and Xavier?
Yeah. Numbers are going to get called a little differently, obviously from where we began the year to where we are now. So opportunity is going to be there. I think at the end of the day, what we're looking for from that room is a little more level of consistency. We're a little hit and miss, we're a little up and down, and that's kind of been a bit of the story of our passing game in general. One week it looks really great, and the next week it hasn't been so great. And it's been a little bit of an up and down roller coaster. So that goes back to the previous question. It's like, what are we doing that we do well that we can continue on? What are the things that they do well to make sure that they're in the right position to do it? Especially some guys that haven't been playing as much that we're going to be counting on here in the second half of the season. So we just want more consistency at that aspect of it. And that starts with me and what we're doing. And then it's putting the players in the right position to do it. And then ultimately the quarterback, receivers, just working cohesively to make it come to life every Saturday.
Kind of along the lines of position groups, how do you and Coach Flood feel about the line right now after 2 weeks?
Well, I think, getting Derek back was a really good move for us. I think that having some competition at left tackle has been good. I think for Christian and Andre. I think Junior, he needed the week kind of physically to get his body back right. I think Jake needed the week to get his body back right. Now, obviously, it's a really good opportunity for Tope. I thought there was a couple plays, a guy first time really starting that he probably loved to have back. He didn't need to reach out and grab the guy that he got the hold on. He was in good position. Just let him come to him. So those are all kind of some of the learning curve that you get when you play. But in the end, again, whatever we do run-wise and protection-wise, making sure those guys are in the right kind of position to have success. And we're going to need it this week. This is a really good defensive front. Their nose tackle is a disruptive guy, causes problems. They're really good on the edge. So we need to play a really sound football game up front this week.
seems like against Oklahoma State, y'all found that true 3-4 worked was pretty effective until they ran out of energy. How does that defense work well, or what does it need to emphasize going against the wide running scheme Baylor uses?
Well, I think the key to the drill is setting an edge, right? I mean, ideally, we never want the ball to get outside of us. And so when you play it that way, we're able to set a little better edge with both outside backers. And then, we're a pretty big physical front inside as long as we stay in our gap. And the reality of it is the runs that spit on us late in the Oklahoma State game, they weren't new runs. They weren't new schemes. We got out of our gaps, and then the run spit. And ironically enough, guys were coming to the sidelines already knowing that they had gotten out of their gap. So now how do we get them to stay in their gap time after time after time again? Because Baylor's not going to be very different. They believe in the outside zone. They run it well. And the whole idea behind that scheme is, when you get out of your gap, that's when the ball gets creased. And so it's going to be really critical for us this weekend in the run game to play, really disciplined in our run fits. And then ultimately you got to defeat the block and make the tackle. So they stress you that way. But I feel good about the guys at least recognizing last week where it got out of whack. And so better week last week of understanding it in practice. And then we got to get to it this week as we go.
Yeah, Steve, your team hadn't played as great on the road as home, which a lot of teams do. I was curious if you changed your approach and with the self-scouting during the bye, if you figured out any factors that you might want to change.
Well, I think one, and this one's a little unique just with the bus trip as opposed to having to fly anywhere, so it's a little bit different. I think ultimately from a cadence standpoint, offensively, we really ran into that at Arkansas with the crowd noise, and we have to prepare for it this week at Baylor. So that can always be a little bit of an issue when you're changing your cadence, just trying to get the ball snapped, and you're on silent cadence and things like that. So definitely going to put more work into that this week, so we're just more and more comfortable doing it and utilizing the crowd noise rather than wait till later in the week, kind of implementing that for earlier in the week just to get our comfort level right. I think defensively, it's not really about being on the road. It's just about doing our job and locking into the process of doing it. So, again, for us, it's not really about home or away. It's got to be more about a complete 60 minutes of football of doing our job really well. And that's really where our focus is, not so much that we're on the road or at home.
Steve, Casey had some time to, I think, heal up a little bit too. But with a little more time for you and Coach Milwee and him, what do you work on? What do you look back at now that you have a little exhale time, some of the good, some of the bad going into this last stretch?
Yeah, I think a couple things for me. What has stood out when we've gotten the looks we're really trying to get done, Casey's really played well. He's played lights out, and didn't play great with TCU. I thought there were some opportunities there, but outside of that, when we've gotten the looks we want, he's been playing really well. I think the one thing that we're looking at is just making sure from an install standpoint from week to week that we're giving him enough repetitions at these plays. If we don't get the coverage that we are looking for, that he really knows exactly where to go with that ball when he starts getting to his secondary reads. And so I think he understands that. He's working on it. And that's our job as much of it as it's his. I keep coming back to it. Our job is to put him in the best position to have success. And if that means, hey, we're practicing a play maybe more times throughout a week than we normally would to ensure that he feels really good about it regardless of the coverage we get, that's a win. So those are some of the things that we're trying to work on with him to get that done.
Yeah, Dave coached some great defenses at LSU. What problems do his defenses give basically with his philosophies?
Well, I think, first of all, Dave's a great defensive coach. One is they're very sound. These guys are not, they don't really, hurt themselves. They're where they're supposed to be and when they're supposed to be there. They use good fundamentals, good techniques. I think the second thing Dave does a really good job of is if you hurt him somewhere, he has the answer in his toolkit to fix it, to combat what you do. So I don't think you can play against Dave one-dimensional. If you run something and it looks good early, he's going to make the necessary adjustments. So you have to make the necessary adjustments, and you have to move that way. He's not just going to keep doing the same thing. He's going to make the adjustments to try to fix the issue that he has. And then they have enough variety, whether it's the two deep stuff, the post high stuff, the pressures, a lot of simulated pressures where they're bringing one, dropping one. It's a 4-man rush, and it looks like a pressure, but in reality, it's still only a 4-man rush. So good variety to it, and then ultimately his guys play hard. They've always played hard for him, whether it was Wisconsin, LSU, now at Baylor, and you see it more so even now in year 2 with this veteran group. They play very hard.
Sarkisian talked about after the Oklahoma State game. He said one of his focus points during the bye week was becoming a better vocal leader and kind of exercising his voice more. I don't know if you saw that from him over the last week plus, or just kind of where is he with that? And what's your overall take just on vocal leadership? And do you think you need more, or can that be overrated? Just want your take on that.
Yeah, I think vocal leadership's good when you do right? When you're doing the things necessary, when you're whether it's on the field or off the field, whether it's in your personal life or on the field and how you play. Bijan clearly is a guy that could be as vocal as he would want to be. Because he's an unbelievable player. He's a great work ethic. He's a great human off the field. So to me, it would be a positive, but I only want him to go down that road when he's comfortable and ready to go down that road. And, he's in the middle of his second year. If that's the space he wants to get into, I'm all for it, because he's only going to provide, quality advice for the guys around him. I mean, clearly he handles his business in a tremendous manner, whether it's in his preparation, whether it's who he is off the field, and then in his competitiveness when he plays in game. So, and he's got a really good guy to learn from and to see it. Roshan is tremendous at it, so I think it's helpful for Bijan. But ultimately, vocal leadership, you need to make sure the guys that are vocal are doing right. Because if not, then it goes on deaf ears, because the guys don't want to hear somebody yelling at them that doesn't do right, and they know doesn't do right.
Steve, just thinking about where y'all are in the season and where the bye week falls and what's ahead, I keep wondering, is it possible that the story of this season has not yet been told, right? I mean, because y'all clearly have done it physically. It's a mental thing. But with the games that are left, with the championship still on the table, is it possible that is the issue, that the story of this season is not yet fully known?
I would agree with that. I think so many times in sports, we like to define a team by one moment or one game, when in reality the story is never really told until it's complete. And, I think we've got a lot of football ahead of us, and in my opinion, a lot of really good football ahead of us. And the chips are going to fall where they may. We've put ourselves in the position that we are for our own doing. But we can't really sit around and, this is it. That's all we got, So our approach is really, all right, what are we doing really good? Let's do more of that. Let's take this thing one game at a time, and we'll worry about December when December comes. But we've got some great games in front of us, quality opponents. We think we can play better than we've played all year, and we'll see what happens. And then at that point, then we can talk about, what was the defining moment, or what was the story of this season.
Time for 2 last ones, Chip and then Bob.
Steve, obviously you expect teams to react to how you're playing them. They make their adjustments, then you make adjustments to their adjustments. How would you say your staff has done on the adjustments to the other team's adjustments?
I think we've been adequate. We've had moments where we've really come out of halftime and done some really cool things, come out of the locker room and executed in all 3 phases and performed. I think we've had other times when we haven't, and we've got hurt on a couple plays that have caused issues, whether they've been on either side of the ball or on special teams. And I mean, that's football to some degree. I mean, they're good coaches too, the teams we play. But the point of it, to me, I think one area where we've had to adjust some, especially offensively and moving forward, is, sometimes when things don't go right, my initial natural instinct is to give them something for our players that I know they do really good, that may not be as elaborate of a play call. When in reality, when we do some things that are a little more elaborate, when you look at the tape, even later in game, we execute them pretty well. And I probably didn't give our players enough credit to do that. And so I think that we'll stay in that kind of frame of mind, because you trust the players in our preparation. And, that is something that I give them credit in their preparation to do it. We see it in the first half, the way we play. We see it coming out of the locker room. And I just think we need to kind of stay down that course and line of thinking into the fourth quarter, even after if we have a couple tough series that don't go our way.
Our good friend Anthony couldn't be here this week to ask the question, so I'm going to carry on the tradition. What's your favorite Halloween candy? And what were a couple of your favorite Halloween costumes growing up?
I'm going to go with Mike Leach. I'm not a big fan of candy corn. Hey, man, I got a sweet tooth, so pretty much anything you throw it out there, I'll probably try it. Man, I don't know. I'm not a big scary guy, so that everyone knows. So anything that was like the Jason masks and things like that just kind of creep me out. So I'm more of the fun costume guy, if that helps.